Hey Bronco Nation, I'm Jordan, and today we are here in Johnson Valley where Ford has kindly invited us to drive the Bronco Raptor. Now, since it came out back in January, you all have been asking, hey, how does it drive? So today and this week, we are here to drive it on-road, off-road, put it through its paces, and let you guys know what we think. Now, if you're looking to get a thorough walkthrough that shows you the details, the hardwares, and the specifications that make this Bronco Raptor go ahead and click the link in the description to watch our full walk around. That video was taken back in January, also out here in Johnson Valley, and it gives you an in-depth interior and exterior tour of the Bronco Raptor. But today, we are here just to drive it. Now, obviously, the Bronco Raptor is an off-road beast, but to get to those off-road trails, you're going to have to hit some pavement. So first, we're gonna take a look at how the Bronco Raptor handles on-road. So for this section of the on-road driving test, Ford has sent us out to this kind of windy canyon road just outside of Palm Springs to get a feel for the handling characteristics of the Ford Bronco Raptor. So we're starting off with everything in normal mode. So the suspension, steering, exhaust, and drive modes are all in normal. Now, of course, it's not going to handle like a 911. It is effectively a file cabinet on 37-inch tires. But so far, I'm very impressed. I think that increased track width really helps it. The body roll is less than I expected with this much weight this high up. I expected the body roll to be pretty significant, and honestly it's not. Now I'm not ripping it through here, I'm going 40. Now I am going to try it in sport mode here. As with the Raptor, unlike the regular Bronco, the suspension, the steering, the exhaust are all customizable with these buttons down here on the bottom of the steering wheel. And that really does change the driving characteristics. We were coming out here on the highway and we had the exhaust in Baja Mode, and we shifted it over to quiet and the car just instantly got silent. It was actually quite impressive. But we are going to go ahead and shift it over to sport mode on the steering. There's normal, comfort, and sport. So we're going to put the steering in sport. We're going to put the suspension in sport. There's normal, sport, and Baja. And then we're going to put the exhaust in sport. Not that that's really going to do anything, but just increase the sound. And continue our way down this road. Now I will say the transmission is relatively quick. I would say it's faster than the regular Bronco. Right now we're cruising along in 8th, but if I punch it, it drops to 4 instantly and we're away. Now there is a little bit of turbo lag as you'd expect with an EcoBoost engine, but if we put it over into sport mode, we'll see how that reacts. It should hold the gears a little bit longer. Yeah, as we're going around this curve, it first changed the gauge cluster, but then it's holding in 6th. I punch it, drops to 4th, and away we are. I know people were mad, myself included, that the Bronco Raptor didn't have the 3.5 from the F-150 Raptor, or even the V8, but we knew all along that wasn't going to happen. But this engine feels plenty powerful. We're going to try out the paddle shifters here. Unlike regular Bronco, the Bronco Raptor does come with these nice paddle shifters mounted to the steering wheel. So using the paddle shifters now down to the 3rd. Coming around this corner, up into 4th. That shift is very quick, very quick. Now, one thing that is not impressive that I'm sure you all can guess is the fuel economy. On this trip, we have gone so far, let's see, 38 miles, averaging 9.6 miles per gallon. Now, granted, we are driving a little bit more aggressive on this windy mountain road, but even on the highway portion going 70, we're still only getting 10, 11. Now, there was a headwind, but if you're buying this vehicle, I'm sure you're not buying it for efficiency, but real world driving out here, you're at 9.6, averaging over 40 miles. So now with the steering wheel in sport mode, it obviously tightens up the steering feel quite a bit, especially from comfort. And again, for this size of vehicle on this size of tire, it handles surprisingly well. On these mountain roads, you would think that you're going to be thrown back and forth around these corners and the vehicle is going to kind of wander and have a lot of roll to it. But as you can see there, coming down this hill, the vehicle is automatically downshifting. There's no input from me there, which is nice. Now the Bronco Raptor really does feel composed. Now between its size, the tire size, the track width, the height, and the fact that it has the aerodynamics of a file cabinet, you wouldn't expect this to drive as well as it does. Now, when we first picked up the vehicle, Ford personnel commented and said, you're going to be pretty surprised at how well this thing drives. So I went into it with higher expectations, and I will say it has met and to some degree exceeded those expectations. You know, the body rolls less than you would expect, even with the center of gravity being so high. The steering feels tight. It tracks straight. You're not wobbling all over the road. Now, I will say, driving out here on the highway, there was quite a bit of a crosswind in that canyon coming out of Palm Springs, and you did feel like you were getting blown around the road. But on this windy canyon road with no crosswind, no headwind, the vehicle is responding to the inputs well, and even with its beefed up size, you know, it certainly doesn't drive like a Jeep would if you lifted a Jeep and put it on 37s. Now, as I mentioned in my walk around, the Bronco Raptor does feature the Fox internal bypass shocks with live valve technology, and that basically means that it's sensing the position or the motion of the suspension every millisecond and adjusting the damping rate accordingly. And you really can tell on this road that it's doing that because it's adjusting for the curves, the angles in the road, the rate at which we're going around a curve, and really stabilizing the ride. Now, this really, Ford advertised it as more of an impact off-road when you're doing high-speed, you know, when you're in high-speed desert environments. But on this road we're on right now, going around corners, the suspension, as it's adjusting, really is making the ride much more stable and reducing what you would otherwise expect to be a lot of body roll. Now, one thing that I am really enjoying a lot more than I expected to is the digital gauge cluster. Now, of course, this is an upgrade over the regular Bronco trims. Regular Bronco does not have this fully digital gauge cluster. This is something that we see in F-150, in the new F-150, and F-150 Raptor, and, you know, on some other vehicles in the Ford lineup. But what's really nice is how configurable it is and how it changes with different drive modes. So you can see all the information very nicely laid out. And as you switch through the drive modes, whether it's off-road, on-road, Baja, whatever it may be, the whole gauge cluster kind of reconfigures, if you'd like it to display more relevant information to the driving condition you're in. So here on normal, in normal mode, just driving down this road here, it's got the speedometer on the right, the tachometer on the left, and then in the middle of the tachometer, it shows what gear you're in. And unless the gear selector is down in M as opposed to drive, M for manual, then the paddle shifters will default back to automatic, you know, after a period of time. But it is nice to have all this information displayed right here in front of me. Again, as you go through the different drive modes, it will change, and we'll take a look at more of that once we're off-road. Now, when it comes to city driving, there's not a ton to say other than, you know, it drives like a large SUV. The biggest thing you're gonna have to be aware of when it comes to driving this in the city is just spatial awareness. So this vehicle sits almost a foot wider than a regular Bronco. It's obviously a lot taller, so your vision is more limited in the sense that the hood juts way out, and you don't have a ton of visibility since people are usually sitting quite a bit lower than you. So parallel parking, you know, parking in spots is going to be more difficult. Now, I will say the visibility, especially out the rear window of the Bronco Raptor, is quite limited, is really honestly pretty restricted. Between the 37-inch tire that's mounted to the back, the spare, and the additional crossbar bracing that they've put behind the C-pillar, the combination of those two looking in the rearview mirror really restricts visibility. Because you are so tall and the B-pillar is quite prominent, the blind spot of the Bronco Raptor is, you know, is pretty substantial. Now, of course, the Bronco Raptor does come with the blind spot monitoring, the Bliss system, so that does help. But of course, you know, I've mentioned this before, but make sure you're remembering your spatial awareness and how big of a vehicle you are when driving this because of that reduced visibility. Well, that does it for the on-road driving impressions. Over the course of our 110, 120 mile day, both highway, up a mountain, down a mountain, in town, on some 2-lane roads, our average fuel economy was right in the 13 mile per gallon range. So not the greatest, but again, if you're buying this for fuel economy, you're probably purchasing the wrong car. But nonetheless, it was fun to rip, and I probably was driving a bit more aggressive than most of you will around town. Now it's time to leave the pavement, hit the dirt, and see what this thing can do where it really shines, and that is off-road. Let's go to Johnson Valley. So day 2 of the Bronco Raptor drive. Today we are headed off-road So we're just doing kind of a transit section here on the highway in Johnson Valley, but we'll soon be turning off and putting this Bronco Raptor through its paces on the dirt. Now, I've ridden in the Bronco Raptor off-road. If you saw our testing footage, which will also be linked below in the description, you will see some of the early testing footage from the Bronco Raptor out here in Johnson Valley. But today, I actually get to be behind the wheel and hopefully replicate some of those things. I will say, we're out here in Johnson Valley where King of Hammers is, so you may not recognize it because we're missing 250,000 people to my left. But I will say it makes driving out here much more enjoyable and a lot less stressful. So if you are familiar with KOH, you know we take that long dirt road in from the main highway, and that's what we're on right now. We're cruising about 40-45 miles an hour, and this thing just floats. Of course, we haven't gotten into any really intense terrain yet, but just going on this dirt road, this thing is extremely happy on it, and I'm extremely happy driving it on this dirt road. We are aired down to about 22-25 PSI, and it's a very, very, very comfortable ride. Okay guys, we are continuing our off-road drive. Obviously I'm wearing a helmet now, and before all of you comment, because I can already see you running to the comment section, these are not optional. We were asked to wear these by Ford for safety while on the rocks, so we are going to do that and respectfully wear these helmets. So save the comments, please. But we are now in the rock crawling section. This is my first time, obviously, rock crawling the Bronco Raptor. We have switched it into rock crawl mode, which takes us into 4 low, engages the rear locker, and also turns on or disconnects the stabilizer bar disconnect. Traction control is obviously off, and I have put the gauge cluster down here in kind of performance view, which puts the tack right in the center of the vehicle and then shows kind of the drivetrain off to the right. The big 12-inch screen here is also showing the front camera with the these 2 treads here, these 2 tracks, and as you turn the wheel, it's showing you where the vehicle's going to go. So this is a really great feature as well. And then of course your hero switch is up here, as it is in all Broncos. So we're gonna go up this rock crawl section and see what this Bronco Raptor is made of. Okay, we're gonna go up this next, you can almost call it a pinch. Again, I'm in rock crawl, just rear locker. They have not told me to engage the front, and so I'm not going to. Sweet. Now, one thing that's super cool and obviously unique to Bronco Raptor having the full digital gauge cluster is when you put it into rock crawl mode, it changes the terrain, so it's actually showing the depiction of the Bronco Raptor on a rocky surface. It's configurable, so you can change what is shown here. Obviously the tachometer is on the left and the speedometer is on the right, and then in the center, I have these little crosshairs that are showing me pitch and roll, and then also the steering wheel angle. So it's pretty useful when you're going off-road. Then another menu, if you don't like the crosshairs, this is the off-road status display. So you can show, it shows on the left, top left there, the pitch, on the right it's the roll, and then the center is kind of a depiction of the chassis of the vehicle, showing my rear locker's engaged, I'm in 4 low, and my stabilizer bar is disconnected. So if I go ahead and engage the front locker, it'll show a lock up there on the front of the vehicle along the front axle, and it'll turn yellow when it's locked. And then if I tap this again, it obviously disengages and that lock goes away. So it's just nice. It shows you the off-road status of your vehicle in an easy to read display, so it can show you your tire pressure, so on and so forth. So we just came up that hill there, just kind of crested the top, and while obviously the base Bronco Sasquatch is impressive, this thing is, in my opinion, it takes it to a whole new level. I mean, the ease in which it is able to go up the terrain we just came up is honestly, it kind of blew me away. There was very little slippage. The vehicle felt steady, it felt planted. The one drawback I will say, and people have been saying this for a few months now, is the width. There are certain pinches and points and turns where the vehicle width and just the sheer size of this thing is you know, a drawback, and that's a place where a regular Bronco would have the advantage. But other than that, I mean, the ground clearance, obviously, you know, the 37-inch tires, it really is a beast if you have, you know, the width on the trail. So I'm impressed. So on this descent portion, we are now trying out trail control, which I'm sure you all are familiar with from regular Bronco. It has made its way over to Bronco Raptor. For those of you not familiar, that is a button in the center of the goat modes dial. When you click it once, it activates trail or one pedal. So basically the vehicle left foot brakes for you, so you're just using the accelerator. But then if you use the set buttons, like for cruise control, it basically, it activates trail control, which is essentially off-road cruise control. Now when you're in rock crawl mode, it goes in half-mile-an-hour increments. So right now I'm setting it at, it's set at 2 miles per hour, and the vehicle is holding me at 2 miles an hour as I go down this descent. So my foot are completely off the gas and the brakes, and the Bronco is taking us down this hill right at 2 miles an hour. Again, it's in half-mile-an-hour increments, so you can be pretty accurate. But if you're newer to off-roading, or you've been going all day and kind of just want a little bit of a break, it is nice to be able to flip that on and have the vehicle take some of that driver load off.
This is one of our biggest drop-offs. We're going to spot you down this. Make sure you're covering the brake when you go down the drop-off. Real slow, nice and steady.
Right now we're at 16 degrees. 26, 27, 28, 29, 31. 31 degrees, and I'm pretty sure the back right tire came off the ground. Easy does it. Not too bad. 31 degrees, maximum pitch downhill. We got on that little decline right there. Okay, so now we've switched vehicles out of the Bronco Raptor we've been driving all day into some designated units for this rock crawling section, as it is quite a bit more intense. Still same specifications, nothing different, but we have gone back into rock crawl mode, 4 low, stabilizer bar disconnect, and rear locker on. So we're just going to be guiding me through this, as this is probably the most intense rock crawling I've ever done in my life. If I don't talk that much, it's because I'm focusing on the spotter. This is insane. So for those of you familiar with the Johnson Valley area or King of Hammers, any of that stuff, this little trail, terrain park, rock crawling section, whatever you want to call it, is called Her Problem. And I can see why it could certainly be a problem. But we're going to see if the Bronco Raptor is going to get through this. Again, I've never driven this intense of terrain before, so this is my first time. Obviously there's professional spotters out here, but yeah, this is just insane that a totally stock vehicle right off the factory line can do what we're about to do. Oh my gosh, I don't. Oh.
Now bring it towards me.
Okay.
You got it, keep coming, you got it. Straighten up, straighten up. Nice. Good job, boy.
Wow, well that was one of the most insane things I've done. That's one of those scenarios where you just have to total trust in your spotters, because without them, there's just not a chance that I was getting anywhere on that path. So that was pretty sick, not gonna lie to you. Okay, now we have come to the high-speed off-road handling course that they have set up for us here in Johnson Valley. So we're gonna put this thing in Baja mode and see what it can do. I will say off-road, high speed in the desert, the Bronco Raptor, again, is great, you know, up to 45 miles an hour. It's, again, very composed. You know, as I talked about earlier, the suspension is adjustable. So there is normal, sport, and Baja suspension. So we did try it in Baja suspension, and it does eat up the ground very, very well. It's very comfortable if you've been out here to Johnson Valley for King of Hammers or another one of the desert events, or just to come out here and have fun. You know the terrain and you know how unpredictable it can be with so much traffic out here. And so the whoops and the washes, you know, can change pretty quickly. And the Bronco Raptor did a great job of handling that at the speeds we drove it on. And you certainly do notice that increased suspension travel when going over whoops at the speeds we were doing. You know, 13 and 14 inches of increased suspension travel really comes in handy when you're going over uneven terrain at a high speed, and the way the vehicle kind of just floats over that terrain is extremely impressive. Now, would I like to do this at 70 and see what it's like then, and 80 and possibly even 90 up to speeds that they run in King of Hammers? Because Ford has touted this as a, you know, the first desert racing inspired SUV. So I would love to actually test it in conditions similar to that, but unfortunately we were not able to today. The increased track width, of course, comes in very handy when you're taking turns in the desert. Baja mode out here on the sand is very responsive. It holds the gears nicely. It gives you power right when you need it, and it sounds good. Does it sound great? No. Am I blown away by the exhaust noise? Not at all. It does get a little bit annoying after a while, and can be a bit intrusive, but it does sound desert race truck-ish a little bit. You can certainly tell that it is desert race inspired. Would I love for it to be a V8 growl? 100%. Are we going to get that from this truck? No. So is it bad? No. Is it great? Also no. Well, there you have it. There is what it's like to drive the Bronco Raptor on and off-road. Now, of course, these are just my opinions. They may differ from your own or other people reviewing this vehicle, but that's my personal take on it. And boy, did we have a blast out here. Huge thank you to Ford for inviting us. As always, thank you for joining us in this video. If you have not already, make sure you hit that big red subscribe button down below. Hit the thumbs up, and if you have any other questions, leave us a comment. We'll be sure to answer those to the best of our abilities. If you want to become a member of the Bronco Nation, head on over to the bronconation.com/join us, or go shop gear and get yourself some new Bronco swag. Until the next time, thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you on the roads. Goodbye, guys.